Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Our producer, who's usually with us, Patrick Newman, I think he may be somewhere off in the listening land, but he's having some technical problems. So he's been brave enough to leave Allen and I out here on our own. So Allen, how you doing, buddy?
Good, but you know what a great example of emotional sobriety, right? In terms of dealing with
I was thinking the same thing.
You know, it's like here, Patrick's having trouble with his internet. Mm-hmm. And you know, he's of course he wants to be here. He's frustrated and stuff like that. But you know, it's the problem is never the problem. It's how we cope with it. Mm-hmm. So it's unfortunate. He just won't be able to be present with us. He's listening in on it. But we're just making the best, that we can with it, and decided to just go forward and record it at my end, not his end, and to deal with it, because reality is reality only 100% of the time. And
that's right. That's right. And that's all. Just
100% of the time. And it's how you cope with it that counts. And that's, so it's always interesting to me how what is happening right now can always, if you're paying attention to it and aware of it, there's always an emerging opportunity to plug this stuff in that we're talking about.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things. And the other, and I'll use this as a way to get to my main pet peeve, which is just repetition, practice, and then practice some more. Is the more we focus on this, the more consciously we make that our daily practice, the more we're aware of it. Just even on the outer layers of our consciousness. It's like because I realized when you and I started talking, Alan, that both you and I, and we'll check out with Patrick when we next have him on, is we were both thinking in terms of how we're dealing with this. It's like, I mean, it's not like it wasn't the main thing. It was just that observer self of me was saying, was fully aware that we're doing a podcast on emotional sobriety. And here we were, three of us talking, just problem solving.
Yes, that's right.
And that's all we were doing. We were just problem solving. And it's like is there something wrong? It's like, no, there's just a problem to be solved.
That's right. See, and what a shift in consciousness. I mean, I want everybody to hear that. See, when my consciousness is undifferentiated, then when I hit an obstacle, it's not about solving the problem. It's whose fault is it?
Well, first I get offended.
Yeah.
I mean, no, seriously.
Take it personal. Take it personal.
No, the first thing I do is like, and I don't think of it that way, or I didn't when I was doing this more often. I didn't think of it that way. But basically, what I'm reacting to is, sort of, how dare this happen? Right. It's like, what? It's who knows what the cause and effect is, all this stuff. But like you said, it has nothing to do with me personally. But I would, it's amazing what I could make in those days in the past, and potentially still. I always want to point that out. But that I would make so much personal, and it would, it would be. I could sometimes spend days being offended by something before I even got to the problem solving part.
Yeah. See, I'm convinced that one of the things that drives our perfectionism is the fear of the should monster.
Yep.
Is because
if
I don't do it perfect, there's going to be a price to pay.
That's right.
And either I'm going to pay the price or you're going to pay the price.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to either beat myself up or I'm going to beat you up. I mean,
that's perfect. The reason we're blaming other people is so that we don't get blamed, so that we don't blame ourselves.
And see, and that's, I think, also what drives the perfectionism on our part, is that if I do everything perfect, my should monster won't have any ammunition. Right. He won't have a reason to come after me.
Right.
So
which is ridiculous. Yeah, which is ridiculous, because the way I say is because it's not true, because because I don't know why these culprits in our head, these I do have a theory on why, but why these culprits, whether it be our addiction or our self-condemnation, seem to be a little bit smarter than we are, because that sets us up to need each other. Our recovery batteries hold a charge for quite a while nowadays. It's like I can do a lot of stuff and not have to necessarily plug in everywhere, frequently worry about my battery running out, because as long as I know that that isolation is the real killer in all this stuff. I mean, it really is. I mean, my depression can't get me, my addiction can't get me, none of this stuff can get me as long as I remain connected. As long as I remain honest, so that you and other people I need to know what's going on with me. I can have the worst day in the world, and I'm still okay because I've got connections and people are there for me.
Another theory about this, that addict self or any of these parts being a little smarter than us. The way that Dr. Rader, my mentor, when I first came into field, said, he said, your addict self is a clone of you. It has every bit of intelligence that you have. And because it does, it knows your next move. He says it's like playing chess again. So it looks like it's smarter, and all it is it's read your book. It's read your moves. It knows exactly what you're going to do. And so it uses that not in a constructive way, but in a very destructive way to sabotage you. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's like we're playing chess against a clone of ourselves. Well, that has one intention in mind, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. Their goal is quite different from ours. And it's interesting because one of the things I've said to people before, I said, when you think about these intrapersonal culprits, I said, think about the people who are closest to you and how they know, people in your family, for instance, and how you will use the expression, they know how to push my buttons. I say, these guys are inside you. They can see your buttons. They're dead on with those buttons. They can get us every single time. I love that idea that it's just, they have a little bit more information.
Yeah.
To get there ahead of
they
us.
know us, and they can use that information as they want. It's like in a boxing match. If you see a pattern to your opponent's, behavior, you can use that pattern against them.
You know what, Alan? That's beautiful, because one of the things what that also says is that's I love having insights when you and I are talking. It's like that's one of the ways of looking at why it works, and why when we teach people to basically change responses, try on different responses, not even say you have to do it this way, but what happens is that throws the intrapersonal relationships off. It's very much like what I tell people. I've just finished telling people for quite a bit because I always do this during the holidays before everybody goes home to their family. I say, it's like everybody's going back to a play that they've been in forever, and everybody knows the blocking, everybody knows the lines, they know your lines and their lines. And then I said, but it's kind I try to teach people, I'll say, don't go in there and be mean because you're learning, you're becoming more aware of the dysfunction, but have some fun and respond differently.
It is interesting.
We're seeing why we have Patrick, because one of the things that happens when Patrick isn't here, you and I just start talking and go wherever we're going to go.
No, but this is kind of just allowing what is emerging to be the focus, right? That's what we say all the time. And what's emerging here today is what we're talking about. A lot of different things. First of all, the importance of experimentation in your practice of emotional sobriety is trying different things on, breaking patterns, pattern disruption. Harriet Lerner wrote a great book called The Dance of Intimacy.
Yes.
And what she said in it, which is just exactly what you were saying intrapersonally, she said interpersonally, we fall into a dance with our partners. And she says, oftentimes we get bored. We know the steps, we know where it's going to go, we know where it's going to lead. And she says, and oftentimes we get into blaming our partners. Why are you still doing the same dance with me? But we're still following. Either we're following or we're initiating the dance. It's not like they're just doing the dance. We have to cooperate. Yeah. So she said, learn a new dance step, try something different. And interpersonally or intrapersonally, what one of the things that I've learned with you is you could go ahead and say, look, I can see that that's part of my personality. I make mistakes at times, but that's not all that I am. Yeah. I know that's a part of me, but I know there's other parts of me that are very interested in learning and continuing to develop. So look, what I'll take from what you're saying is that I've made a mistake. Now I got to learn from it, but I'm not going to define myself by it. See, that's the stuff. That's the internal dialogue, right? That we have, which is changing the dance steps.
I love that you bring back experimentation, because too often, because most of us have some version of perfectionism, when people start into a process of growing, to people like us who are facilitators or therapists or whatever, if we're not careful, they'll hand over they'll take the power back from some place in their life, but they'll give it to us. And so they're trying to say, am I doing this right? And one of the things, when people say, I don't want to do it wrong, what I say is the only thing I know that you can do wrong in therapy with me is not be honest. I mean, and it's not wrong. You're not wronging me. I mean, the therapy that's going to come out of this is going to, if you give me a fictional version of you, I'm going to do my best to help that fictional version.
You're not doing something wrong in therapy if you're not being honest. It's just share that you're having trouble being honest.
See, yeah, that's honest.
That's honest, right? See, but people sometimes don't think of that. They think that I've got to make that big jump. No, you don't. I mean,
right. That's a good point. Doesn't mean you have to tell me everything, right? It's like, no, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I've seen therapists make the mistake of approaching a client as if you should trust me because I'm a therapist.
That's right.
It's like, no, you should trust me if I prove trustworthy. So no, that's a really good point. Being honest does not mean you're just telling me everything. It just means
it means that I'm having trouble being honest about something, and I'm feeling a lot of shame about it, and I'm afraid of how you're going to think about me or how you're going to react to me. That is exactly what being in therapy and getting the most out of it looks like. It's not being perfect. It's being who you are and being transparent with your therapist about that.
Yeah. Actually, I have a client right now that does a beautiful job with this. She's just now in touch with a lot of trauma from her past that she has not dealt with. And she has a lot of shame and stuff she's dealing with. But one of the things that she does regularly, consistently, is she will acknowledge to me, there's something that I know I need to process, but I'm not ready to do it. And it's like, okay, is there anything I can do to help? Sometimes we find that she can do it better with writing than talking, or sometimes, because she's a remote client, sometimes she says there's some things I need to do on the telephone without a visual, where we're not seeing, where we're not looking at each other. And we do it that way. We find a way to do it. And because one of my favorite things of being a therapist is being a person who can help create a space where you said it before, we don't want you to be perfect, where people can bring their radically imperfect self in and really have the experience over time that basically you can't fuck this up. No, you can't, there's not going to be a lot of times early in therapy, they're waiting to cross the line where we're going to, the therapist is going to go, nope. We found people that we could do that with. Yeah. I know people that,
we did. And it's not easy. I remember
there was nothing I could say to Linda Odom that was going to be rejected, was going to be judged. It was like, I knew it. It was all right. I was safe.
And like you said, Thom, you don't know that until you start to deal with this. And then that therapist proves trustworthy. A couple of years ago, I was dealing with a situation that was really pushed to the foreground because of what somebody was doing with this experience in my past, where I made a real serious mistake, right? And I was ashamed of it. I had a lot of shame. I've talked about it. I don't want to go into the details here, but I was in therapy and I was encouraged by my sponsor, Thom, talk to your therapist about what's going on. I was so reluctant. I was so afraid of her judgment about what I did and all kinds of things. And I just shared that with her. I says, there's something I want to talk about, and I'm very reluctant to do so. I think you're going to judge me. And I'll tell you, man, she coped with that so well. She, first of all, she respected that I felt that way, didn't push it. She says, look, I can't guarantee how I'm going to respond to you, but I feel like I'm very supportive of you and I understand you a lot. And I mean, she just really said, when you're ready, do it. Don't push yourself if you're not ready. So just accepting that made me ready. I mean, it was so interesting, is that I could trust her, that she didn't have an agenda, that I had to be something to be okay.
Well, but one of the things too that was part of that is because, you know, it's like, it's not about us, it's, you know, as a therapist, but when we're asking somebody to be honest, you know, you and I are also committing to being honest. It's like, it's like, that's the thing that, you know, the old, when you have the old beard scratcher kind of therapy, you know, where somebody just sits there and and says, tell me more. And basically they're saying, it's like they're saying, like, you just strip down and become as vulnerable as you can be because you're in therapy. And I'm going to sit here and be completely, safe. And it's like, you know, the point of therapy is not for the therapist to be safe. I mean, we got to be responsible for ourselves, but the client doesn't have that. And I'd love that. And you're just talking about that. Your therapist, the credibility is profound to me when she says, I can't tell you for sure how I'm going to respond, you know, but this is what I know. It's like, I mean, if somebody promises me something that basically involves predicting the future, you know, if I'm scared of flying and somebody says it's not going to crash when you get on the plane, it's like, that's no longer credible. You don't know that. It's like,
I'll tell you, when I shared her, you know what she did?
What?
She said, I'm more concerned with how you feel and how bad you feel than what you did.
Beautiful.
It was incredible, man. I'll tell you that she just, you know, she really, really touched me very deeply in terms of with the skill and professionalism and caring and empathy that she managed that situation.
Well, and talk about the thing we were going to talk about. There's a little piece of this here, and that's ripple effect. When we experience that, and it's not just therapists where it goes on, but for us, it's very direct when we have those experiences. Because I can think of, when you said that, I thought of 2 or 3 just right off the bat that things, the way that therapists responded to me, that basically you probably couldn't observe me for a week, any given week, that I don't use something that is actually comes from that moment in time, you know, that I'm sharing with and using with other people because I know how profound it was helpful to me. And that's the ripple effect. And when people, and you don't have to be a therapist. When we're treated with that level of respect and trust, we know something experientially about what that's like. We are far more likely as human beings to treat other people that way.
Such a good point, man.
Yeah.
And it's a corrective emotional experience, right? It gives us a whole different relationship with ourselves and with another human being. And you know, it's been a very powerful experience being in therapy with her.
Because one of the things about reassurance is, I mean, I wrote about this in Embracing Fear, is that you know, that I was saying earlier, that reassurance, in order to be helpful, has to be credible. And very often people with ourselves and with other people, unknowingly, we're with an attempt to be reassuring, we're actually minimizing, or we're criticizing. You know, oh, you don't have to be afraid of that, or that's not that scary, or you're gonna, you know, that's not, it's like, I often will tell people, like, it's more reassuring when you tell somebody something that's really tough and really hard and really scary, for them just to respond by saying, wow, that must suck. Than to try to give me a little lecture on why I don't have to feel that way, because reassurance is connection. It's relational again. It's like once, and that's what she did in that experience. She told you what she cared about. She told you what that's a comment about herself. Let me tell you what I care about. And it's like, and it was how you feel. And that's what's more important. So you could made you let go of the content enough, at least, to just share it with her. Yeah. That's a beautiful story.
No, it was great. I mean, it's been a very, very, very powerful and therapeutic relationship. It's been very helpful for me. Patrick's been sending us little notes, right?
Oh, he has? What does they say?
I'll read them. He
Okay.
goes, this reminds me of a period when I was going to therapy and couldn't stay sober. Honesty was challenging then. And see, it is. See, if we do something that we don't feel good about, and, you know, and this happens all the time, see, we get lost in wanting to please the therapist and thinking, and so we try to, like you said, we present this false self, this fictionalized version of ourselves, not who we are. And then we wonder why nothing's changing, right? Yeah. Because somehow that false self won't change. It just is really, right. It's unresponsive to therapy for many reasons, because it's not you. So that was a good one. And it's because so earlier when I started the podcast today, I was telling you about, because you mentioned the ripple effect. So let's talk about that a minute, because the ripple effect is a very strong phenomena that occurs in recovery, and especially in emotional sobriety. In fact, Bill said it in the 12 and 12 when he says, if we practice these principles in our daily lives, the principles of the 12 steps in our daily lives, that we and those about us begin to find emotional sobriety. So there's the ripple effect. This is that changing the dance step that Harriet Lerner was talking about. As soon as I start to grow myself along these lines, it invites the people in my life to come with me. It stirs them towards it. The way that Father Richard Rohr said it, he says, if you don't transform it, you transmit it. Talking about our illness or our pathology.
Well, and that makes
but it goes the other way too.
But the ripple effect happens no matter what.
No matter what, whether it's positive or negative.
We don't matter. I always tell people,
right.
you think you don't matter, but you do. And so how do we have these family dysfunctions that go on and on and on and on?
That's right.
It's because we're not interrupting and changing the ripple effect.
That's right. So if you don't transform it, you transmit it.
I love that.
Once you transform it, you also transmit it. Now you transmit
it no matter what. That's right.
No matter what, that transmission is occurring, like you said, whether it's a positive or a negative thing. And the cool thing about, just like if it's a negative thing, it creates this downward spiral that reinforces itself, right? Problems beget more problems. Negativity creates more negativity and all that. But once you start to turn it in the other way, it's like what Goethe says about providence moving to. All sorts of unforeseen acts and ideas and concepts come our way that encourage us on that path. And that's the great thing about emotional sobriety. It is contagious, just like our illness was contagious, our alcoholism, our dishonesty, whatever it is, it impacts our life, but so does our recovery.
Well, and see, I mentioned this earlier, but this comes down, in my experience with clients I work with, it comes down to even a deeper piece of that, which is what we're really, it's a confrontation. The confrontation is, you matter whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I've actually said it to people that way. It's like, you know, it's sort of like, I've told people, I've written some stuff about the fact that people who feel unloved, but, you know, are loved, I'm going like, it's not up to you whether you're loved or not. It's like, you know, if somebody tells you that they love you, then it's your job to accept that. Of course, when we have such horrible self-esteem, because we're getting the negative ripple effect, you know, that becomes very difficult. But so part of it is just that we matter no matter what. And then the other part is what you're saying, and what we're talking about with the ripple effect is okay, if you're wondering whether there's such a thing as a ripple effect, we're telling you what we believe, which is there is. And the choices you have, the choices I have, is what kind of ripple am I going to send out? You know, and it's about, and that becomes about what we have to teach people about the fact that, no, we have choice. There's a lot of things we don't control, but one of the things we control is about not only how we respond outwardly, but how we respond inwardly. I you know, one of the most profound things I've ever learned, I think, is that from an intrapersonal point of view, is I'm in charge of, and I have control over how I decide to interpret what is happening to me.
Yeah. Well, you know, I started off today by telling you that I was contacted about a month or so ago by Jimmy Neville, and he doesn't mind me using this because it's going to be on his podcast. And he reached out to me. He says, Dr. Berger, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I wrote you. He goes, about 5 years ago, I sent you an email after finding your book, 12 Stupid Things to Mess Up Recovery in a Jail Cell. He goes, my entire perception of 12-step recovery changed, and upon release, I was finally able to begin my journey in recovery. This was a very impactful book and experience for me, and I will never forget it. Over the past 5 years, I went to school, got a bachelor's of computer science degree while working at a residential treatment center for substance abuse, Cornerstone Recovery in Louisville, Tennessee. I am now a software engineer for the Department of Defense and absolutely love my career. I am also really involved in the 12-step service work. I'd love for you to join my podcast. I mean, so here it is, man. To talk about the ripple effect. You know, you throw that out in the world, and then Jimmy writes me, and I was so touched by how it moved him. But now we see how that one stone can create such a reverberation in a person's life.
Absolutely.
And
you're going to be the first guest on his.
I'm the first guest on this podcast.
I love that.
He decided to do. And look, I've had that experience, and you've had that experience before. You know, it's like, my God, we just say one thing. I had one client that just wrote me recently, says, you know, I only had one session with you, but the one thing you said in that session has made such a difference in my life in terms of going on. And so I want people to hear that, is that little gems and jewels and insights can come from all kinds of experiences we have, something we're reading, an interaction like I was talking about with the therapist I'm seeing, Dr. Allen. You know, it's amazing how, if we stay open to these things, Thom, is that they're all around us, brother. They're everywhere, man. They're everywhere.
Well, one of the things too is just sharing it from the therapist perspective. Is it's interesting to me that what we think is we're doing this particularly great and profound is not necessarily the things that the clients are benefiting from. It's right. Like, you know, that's like the Allen book where he and his client made notes about.
Oh yeah, wasn't that interesting? Tell everybody about that book in terms of.
Well, I mean, he basically made a deal with this person that in lieu of payment that she was going to. They each made notes after every one of their sessions, and then they came together at some point and compared notes literally, and it turns out that they both took entirely different things out of those sessions. It was, you know, and one of the things that led me to do, and I've done this for a while for different clients, is I'll have clients actually I just call them bullet points. If after a session, if they'll please just bullet point me and just send me a few bullet points of what they took from the session. And it's almost always they are things that I would not have guessed.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, and they're what I find, Alan, is that a lot of them are just things I take for granted because I'm hanging out with myself all the time. Yeah, so they're little throwaways almost for me, but they go
so jaded sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just normal. It's like, but it's so amazing. And I've had people, and I bet you've had this too, where they come back to you and they say, man, when you said so-and-so to me, and I'm going like, I have no memory of saying that.
That's right.
You know, and it's like, I had one that told me that one time, and I thought, I didn't say that. It's like, but of course, what I didn't say is, no, I didn't say it. But it's like, I'll tell you the story because it's funny. This client, I still hope I didn't say it, but she said, she came back, I mean, years later, I hadn't seen her for very long, but she said, you know, you told me one day that I was just one of those people that probably just wasn't ever going to make it. And I thought, God, I hope I didn't say that. That must have been a bad day for me. But she's telling me how much she benefited from it. So it's like, I wasn't going to say, oh, I never said that, you know, because that would be just me protecting my own ego.
Probably mobilized her and said, wait a minute, you know, I'll show him. I'll show that jerk.
well, as we do, either she heard it in a different way than I actually said it, or I fucked up that day, and she took it and benefited from it. It's
That's
like
right,
either story is beautiful. I love
I'll
it.
tell you, I read this book about failures in therapy,
Mhm.
and I'll tell you, that's one of the things that was the theme through the whole thing, is that the mistakes that many therapists made, they say, thank God for generous clients.
Oh
that
God, no kidding.
that they were able to take it and find a way to turn it into something positive in their lives.
It speaks well for the human condition,
Doesn't
you
it?
know.
It really does.
When I do training workshops, at the beginning, I'm pretty spontaneous and just kind of do whatever comes out. But there's a few things I almost always do, and one of the things I do is I take a moment and I do this sincerely, but with some humor, obviously. But I take a moment to just put thanks out there for my first clients when I got out of graduate school, because I remember sitting in that chair listening to people telling me what they were telling me, and I remember literally thinking, man, this person ought to see somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and then I realized, oh fuck, they think they are, you know, and it's me. It's like, but I, and people that were older than me, because I was like in my young 30s, and I thought, I don't know if these people are stupid or they're just kind and generous, but I got to try and learn and do these things, and it is really speaks well to the human condition that people could benefit from that stuff, regardless of what I knew or didn't know. And that has so much to do with about the power of intention. Yes. Regardless of what it was, what I knew, or I know a lot more than I ever did in those days. But it's like, the truth is, I was absolutely, the part of me that wants to help, that intends to be of most use to those people, was the same as he is in me right now. It's like that part of me, talk about the intrapersonal, that part of me showed up and has been showing up for 40 something years.
Change your life, change your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.